Hello, this is Dr. Mark Leiser. I've decided to do a 5-part series on the Digital Fairness Act, what it is, what it should not do, and why it's so important to get it right, particularly when we look through the lens of dark patterns and deceptive design. This is the first of those 5 lectures. Europe is at a fork in the road because the Digital Fairness Act is not yet an act. As of the 26th of August 2026, the Commission has published no proposal. Its current indicative timetable places an Article 114 initiative in the fourth quarter. The instrument, definitions, remedies, and timetable remain open. This is a valuable drafting moment. Ask what problem the law should solve before text hardens positions. Europe needs a DFA, but not an open-ended mandate to regulate influence. It needs a stable legal trigger, access to the evidence behind adaptive consumer journeys, and remedies that reach no further than the mechanism proved. Let's start with a hypothetical subscriber, Elena. Her annual subscription renews tomorrow. She opens the service and selects Cancel. Nothing on the first screen that she sees is false. The price is accurate. The cancellation controls exists. The wording would probably survive a screenshot review by a regulator. But Elena doesn't encounter just one screen. She encounters a sequence. The service knows that she opened the cancellation flow late at night, after a long session at work, and that previous users with a similar pattern often accept a pause rather than a cancellation. It ranks a retention offer first, inserts a pause option, then a discounted downgrade, and only afterwards presents the final exit as an option. Another user may receive a shorter route. The system keeps testing which sequence preserves the subscription. The example does not prove that any particular service acts unlawfully. It shows the evidential problem. A visible feature can look ordinary while timing, ranking, personalization, and cumulative friction alter the practical capacity to refuse. The regulatory object is therefore not AI, in inverted commas, in the abstract, and it's not every optimization process beneath the interface. It is the way a commercial practice changes the consumer environment. The surface is not the whole evidential picture. The architecture is not the whole legal prohibition. Regulators need to look beneath the surface, beneath the screen, in order to decide whether the journey materially distorted a free and informed decision. The legal status is simple. The DFA has a political mandate and a place in the Commission's work program, but it does not have operative articles yet. The work program indicatively plans an Article 114 initiative for the fourth quarter of 2026. Parliament's legislative train records it as announced, not tabled. No ordinary legislative procedure has begun. Parliament has relevant non-legislative resolutions, but no first reading position on a DFA proposal. The Council has policy conclusions, but no general approach. The legal form also remains unknown. The confirmed policy cluster covers dark patterns, addictive design, unfair personalization, influencer and price marketing. Digital contracts, minors, vulnerable consumers, also alongside simplification and non-duplication. Everything more specific needs a label. A consultation option is not a commission decision. A resolution is political pressure, not draft law. Throughout the series, I will separate confirmed direction, reasoned inference, and my own normative case. In consumer law, or commercial practices law if you want to call it that, material distortion is the organizing concept, but the legal doctrine matters as well. Annex 1 practices of the Unfair Commercial Practices Directive are considered unfair in all circumstances. Outside of it, Article 5.2's general clause requires conduct contrary to professional diligence and material distortion, or likely distortion, of an average consumer's economic behavior. Article 2, subsection E, means appreciably impairing an informed decision and causing a transactional decision that would not otherwise occur. Articles 6 to 9 separately define misleading and aggressive practices. So influence is not the enemy. Recommendation, persuasion, and personalization can reduce search costs, improve accessibility, and help smaller firms compete. The line should turn on interference with the practical capacity to understand, compare, refuse, contest, and reverse. Digital systems make that inquiry harder, not obsolete. Examine the feature, sequence, objective, adaptation, outcome, and context. Repeated small interventions may form one materially distortive journey, even when no isolated screen crosses the line. So keep the substantive gate and modernize the evidence. Under my model, a suspect optimization objective would trigger proportionate assessment and record production duties. Current horizontal consumer law does not impose that general duty. It is a reason to investigate, not an infringement by itself. Liability and structural redesign require the higher threshold unless the legislature enacts a narrow, evidence-backed prohibition. It's also important to remember that Europe is not starting from a blank page. The UCPD supplies a technology-neutral safety net. The Consumer Rights and Unfair Contract Terms Directive governs information, withdrawal, renewal, and terms. Article 25(1) of the Digital Services Act prohibits online platforms from designing, organizing, or operating interfaces that deceive, manipulate, or materially distort or impair free or informed decisions. Article 25(2) disapplies that rule to practices covered by the UCPD or GDPR. Articles 34 and 35 separately impose systemic risk duties on VLOPs and VLOCs. The AI Act is narrower. Article 51A covers specified manipulative or deceptive techniques and requires appreciable impairment, a counterfactual decision, and significant harm, or its reasonable likelihood. Article 51B addresses exploitation of vulnerability due to age, disability, or a specific social or economic situation, requiring material distortion and significant harm. GDPR and ePrivacy govern profiling and terminal access that may power personalization. Each regime has its own scope and trigger. The DSA does not cover every trader or first-party service. The AI Act does not prohibit every adaptive sales journey. Consumer law remains the horizontal safety net. The DFA should therefore fill residual gaps, specify evidence duties, and explain how consumer law applies to adaptive sequences. Copying DSA wording or adding a vague fairness layer would multiply the uncertainty that we're trying to get out of the digital acquis. The 2024 fitness check reached a nuanced conclusion. It found the UCPD, Consumer Rights and Unfair Contract Terms Directive relevant and necessary, but only partially effective in digital markets. The reasons include evolving harmful practices, legal uncertainty, fragmented national approaches, limited case law, evidential difficulty, and weak enforcement. The answer is not simply more prohibition. The report combines targeted action, greater certainty, coherent application, enforcement, and simplification without reducing protection. That resembles my DRCF architecture that I submitted to the Digital Regulatory Cooperation Forum in the UK. Preserve the principles, then add an operational grammar of classification, purpose, control, evidence, outcomes, redress, and cooperation. Duties should rise with stakes, autonomy, opacity, vulnerability exposure, irreversibility, and scale. The Scrutiny Board issued a negative opinion in April 2024 and a positive opinion with reservations in July. It said the report understated evidence limits and left some business cost assumptions insufficiently justified. The point is not that no problem exists, it's that prevalence, concern, and aggregate detriment do not by themselves prove causal distortion or select the legal rule. The chronology shows what can be responsibly be predicted. The Commission launched the fitness check in 2022. Von der Leyen's mission letter of 17 September 24 tasked Commissioner-designate Michael McGrath with developing the DFA. The fitness check followed in the 3rd of October. In 2025 came an implementation dialogue, call for evidence, and public consultation. The work program placed the proposal in Q4 of 2026, while the consumer agenda scheduled a separate CPC regulation review. In July 2026, the Commission published a survey of nearly 5,000 children for the impact assessment. Drafting continues. Council has discussed the initiative upstream, but not negotiated text. The ESC exploratory opinion remains ongoing. Q4 2026 is an indicative timetable, but not a binding deadline or a guaranteed event. The content remains contestable, which is why the drafting questions matters now. The fitness check gives politics two numbers: an estimated 7.9 billion euros in annual consumer detriment after redress, and roughly 511 to 737.3 million euros in annual adjustment and administrative costs of complying with the three evaluated directives. Both require caution. Detriment signals scale, but not which practice caused which loss, whether material distortion occurred, or which remedy actually works. Compliance costs remind us that complexity is distributional. Incumbents absorb it more easily than SMEs and smaller providers. The scrutiny board questioned parts of both evidence and assumption. The task is calibration. Underreach exposes consumers and rewards extraction. Overreach treats useful personalization as suspect and entrenches incumbents. Duplication creates records without proof. Vagueness moves the perimeter into cautious guidance and defensive compliance. A sound DFA should make safeguards legally legible. Bounded purposes, meaningful control, realistic testing, reversibility, and redress should reduce intensity. Concealed objectives or friction that obstructs rights should increase scrutiny. The consultation therefore sharpens the fault line. The Commission received 3,341 valid responses and more than 4,000 call for evidence submissions. Among non-campaign respondents, 72% supported binding action on dark patterns, 70% on addictive design, problematic product features, and unfair personalization, and 68% on influencer marketing. These figures show salience, but they're not a representative mandate. Consumers generally favored binding rules. Large businesses respondents were markedly less supportive, with SMEs between them. 26% saw possible concrete simplification. 68% expressed no opinion. Parliament's been pressing for stronger intervention, child protective defaults, and access to experimentation evidence. Council supports a DFA but stresses enforceability, coherence, simplification, and burdens. Commission language increasingly emphasizes remaining gaps and non-duplication. My position, I think, crosses all the camps. Enforcement alone cannot expose evidence held by the trader, but a broad fairness duty or feature blacklist cannot replace a legal test. The middle ground needs a method. My method has three dimensions. First, the trigger. Material distortion should remain the controlling general gate. The legislature may supplement it with narrow evidence-backed red lines, including specific protections for minors, without converting every child-facing feature or every optimization objective into an infringement. Second, evidence. Authorities need access to what a screenshot cannot reveal anymore. Optimization objectives, reward functions, tested variants, A/B results, segmentation, prompts, journey logs, abandonment rates, complaints, reversals, and change history. Evidence production duties correct information asymmetry. They do not relieve the authority of identifying the protected interest, the transactional or rights exercise nexus, and the causal theory. And third, you need a remedy. Individual correction may be enough for an isolated failure. Removing a prohibited objective may solve a design problem. Journey redesign may be necessary where the sequence causes the distortion. Architecture-wide orders require a reasoned explanation that narrower measures cannot address the proven mechanism. Equivalent DSA or AI documentation should be reusable where it answers the same factual question, but reuse should neither establish DFA compliance nor replace consumer outcome evidence. This separates scope of inspection from threshold of liability. Inspect the relevant system, prove the materially distortive practice, remedy the mechanism. The credible third route begins by rejecting two shortcuts. One shortcut is a general duty to make digital systems fair, supported by an ever-growing list of suspect features. That approach recognizes genuine power asymmetry, but it risks turning fairness, in inverted commas, into a conclusion rather than a legal test. Infinite scroll, a recommender, or personalization can support a useful service in one context and can contribute to distortion in another. The other shortcut is guidance only. Existing principles are broad, but authorities cannot reliably apply them to adaptive systems if firms need not preserve nor disclose the relevant evidence. Enforcement without architecture-aware access leaves the hardest cases untouched. The third route has 4 parts. Keep material distortion as the legal gate. Inspect the mechanism through feature, sequence, objective, adaptation, outcome, and context. Tier duties according to stakes, autonomy, opacity, vulnerability exposure, reversibility, scale, and the firm's control and benefit. Then coordinate the remedy across consumer law, the DSA, the AI Act, data protection, and the separate CPC enforcement reform. This position also draws substantive red lines. The DFA should treat optimization for complaint abandonment, cancellation delay, conversion through confusion, vulnerability extraction, or suppression of statutory rights as governance red lines and grounds for scrutiny. Disclosure cannot cure those objectives. Unless Parliament and Council enact a tightly defined per se prohibition, the authority must still prove the statutory elements. Safe harbors should be earned. Bounded purpose, revocable authority, realistic testing, inspectability, reversibility, redress. They should reopen after material changes to models, prompts, objectives, data, or interfaces. That is not deregulation. It's disciplined proportionality. Let me put it in one sentence. The DFA should preserve material distortion as the threshold, give regulators the evidence needed to apply it to adaptive systems, and reserve structural remedies for mechanisms proved to cause or likely to cause that distortion. The remaining lectures in this series develop that position one problem at a time. Lecture 2 moves below the interface from persuasion and harmful choice architecture to deceptive optimization. I use systemic deceptive architecture only for persistent adaptive shaping that meets the material distortion test, not for every adaptive system or the whole technical stack. Lecture 3 applies material distortion to cumulative journeys, targeted consumers, cancellation, and complainant rights, then compares the AI Act and DSA thresholds. Lecture 4 treats vulnerability as relational, person, system, and context. Any user can encounter a vulnerability event without every user being permanently vulnerable. Minors justify heightened protection, while the law must distinguish support from extraction. Lecture 5 turns to evidence, burdens, access, redress, cooperation, risk tiers, safe harbors, and the legislative settlement, including trade secret protection and challengeable enforcement evidence. Together, the series argues for a stable test, architecture-aware evidence, and proportionate remedies. Let's return to Elena's cancellation journey. A regulator can capture each screen, but the decisive facts may sit elsewhere. The objective the system optimized, the variance it tested, the consumer signals it used, the order it selected, and the friction it introduced. That creates the next question for us. If the interface can look neutral while the pathway adapts, where does deceptive design legally live? Lecture 2 will answer by moving from visible dark patterns to deceptive optimization, without making the mistake of treating the whole architecture as unlawful. If you've made it this far, then you want to see how deceptive design moves from a visible feature to an adaptive strategy, continue to Lecture 2, and watch the other lectures in this series as we build the full argument for a Digital Fairness Act that protects autonomy without abandoning legal discipline.